Now, Ryan, can you tell something about your M3? Like, when did you buy it, and how has the journey been till now?
Oh man, buckle up for this story.
Sure.
So much like Sean, my story is a little bit different. My one of my favorite brands is BMW. There's a lot of
Mm,
people out there that don't like BMWs, rightfully so. I've had a lot of really bad ones. I think to date I've owned 8 or 9 of them.
yeah.
And what really started with me was, and I'll get to the M3 part. I just have to
Mm,
build up to the
yeah.
suspense here. So I moved out to California a couple years ago to just try something different. And at the time, I had my Lancer with me,
Mm,
and I put it on coilovers, and it became pretty much undrivable on California roads. So I
mm,
was forced to buy another car.
mm,
And I looked around on all of the want ads, and I found a black 2001 BMW 325 Ci,
mm,
and it was a 5 speed or a 6 speed, and that was that was one of the first cars that I actually learned how to drive manual on. And at this time, I was probably 19, so I should have
mm,
known for a while, but I didn't. And so it was $500, really cheap car.
mm,
I met the guy in a parking lot, and he asked me if I wanted to test drive it, and I said no, I'm sure it's fine, because I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of him, knowing that I couldn't drive stick. So I waited for him to leave, and I spent the better part of that afternoon teaching myself how to drive stick. And that really snowballed into my passion for BMWs. The power is great. The interiors are always great.
mm,
The thing that was different with that car is pretty much everything on it was broken. Sunroof was broken. The driver's side window may or may not roll down depending on the day. Um, Sometimes the headlights worked. If they didn't, you had to get out and slap both the headlights as hard as you could. Um, but it was one of my favorite cars. It was the best experience, and I had so much fun with that thing. And it eventually died. The subframe on pre 2005 BMWs is welded to the trunk. And occasionally, what happens is the subframe brackets will fail and rip out of the trunk,
mm,
and your entire rear trans, your trans line and your differential are pretty much divorced from the car, in which you can't drive the car. And in order for me to fix that car, it would have cost more than I bought it. I mean, it was about a $5,000 repair, and the car was $500. So effectively, I donated it to the shop because they wanted to put my subframe on the wall of shame in their shop, and it's still there to this day. So if any of you are listening are in Dublin, California, northern part of California, you can go to Import Motorsports, and my subframe will be on their wall. Anyway, so I got rid of that car. I bought an E36, and I loved that car too. It was a lot older. It was a 1999, and that lasted for about 15 minutes, and the engine blew up.
mm,
So I ditched that car. I bought another E36. That car lasted for about 3 months. And that one blew up. I think I went through 3 or 4 E36s, same engine problem. Head gasket blew up. I blew a rear differential in one, blew a transmission in another.
mm.
And then finally, I found my 2004 325i. I don't know if you remember that car. It was silver.
Yeah, no, I think I remember that one.
So that was the car that I came back to Utah with, and I bought it from a dealership, and it was clean, very clean, probably the cleanest 325 I've ever seen. Paint was great, everything was great. Had it in Utah when I moved back for about 3 months, and I was going to work one morning, and the traffic was stopped on the freeway, and I had stopped behind a minivan, and a woman in an SUV came up behind me going extremely fast and sandwiched my car in between her SUV and the minivan, and it effectively totaled my car. I was pretty sad. I was very sad about that. And at this point, I'm starting to get more in tune with BMW. I know about their Highline models, the M5s, the M6s, the M3s, everything about it. Like, all the stuff I want, but I can't afford. And so that night, actually, I found an E92 325i, 328i in a city that was about 3 hours south of where I live. It was black. It was great. It was a 6-speed, everything I want, power seats, everything. And so my dad and I drove down to that city. We picked it up, and I had that car for a long time. I had that car for about 3 years. And at this point, I was getting ready to get rid of it. And I just wanted a bigger car because it was a coupe. All of my BMWs, I've never owned a sedan, a sedan BMW. They have all been coupes. But at this point, I was getting older and I was moving stuff around and I needed a bigger car. And at the same time, I also just wanted another fun car. And I don't know why, because I probably shouldn't have been able to afford it. But I was looking at M3s, and the E92 M3 specifically with the V8 is the one that I wanted, because all of the other ones, like the E92 or the E46 M3 is great. The E36 M3 is great, but I went through those chassis and I wasn't a big fan of them. But my E92, the 328i that I had, was the best BMW. I loved that car. And so I figured, well, let's put like 2 more cylinders in this and see if we can make it better. And with that comes the M3. And for whatever reason, I started looking real hard for M3s, and I found a whole bunch of them. And at the time they were decently priced, but for a 2008 model year car, I mean, $25,000 is still a lot of money, regardless of what kind of car it is. It's still a lot of money. And I found 3 of them, and I whittled it down to 2 and then 1. And the one I was actually going to go look at was in New York State. So it's across the country. And effectively, I'd have to buy a $2,000 plane ticket. My dad was going to come with me and we were going to go look at it. And then I'd have to either drive it back across the country or pay shipping, which is astronomical. And that same night, Sean messaged me on Facebook, and we have a thing here in Utah where if a vehicle gets repossessed, so if someone's not making payments on the vehicle from the bank takes it and it goes to an auction house. And occasionally Sean would look at this auction house and just see kind of what car, because the cars are being auctioned off what the bank needs, right? So some of them are actually pretty cheap because some of the people made payments all the way up until, the cars were $4,000 and they couldn't pay it anymore for whatever reason. So sometimes you can get really good deals. But that night I found a car in New York, and I was like, all right, well, let's start making arrangements to see what it's going to take to get out to New York. And Sean messaged me and said, hey, just an FYI, I found there's an M3. It's a coupe. It's a 6-speed. It's up a couple hours north of you. And I saw some pictures, wasn't in the best shape, but it was an M3 with under 100,000 miles. And they wanted a really good deal out of it because they just needed what the guy owed. And so I think that was on like a Wednesday. And on a Friday, I think I took that day off, went up, looked at it, needed a lot of work, but I fell in love with the car. I mean, I knew the second that I walked into the auction house that I was going to buy it because I saw it and I was like, it's done deal. Not particularly in the color that I'd want, but I mean, beggars can't be choosers. And I looked at it and I was like, this is going to happen. And I went down. And at the time, this was the most expensive car I've ever bought. And so my dad was like, what you need to do is you need to go get a cashier's check for the amount, hold it in your hand, make sure that this is the money you want to spend on this car. So I did that, thought about it for about 2 seconds, went up and bought it. And at this point in time, I've done so much research on the M3. I know every problem, every solution, and all the things that could or could not go wrong. And one of the things that goes wrong with these cars, anywhere between 40,000 and 90,000 miles, is the valve actuators. And the valve actuators open the throttle actuators. So they open and close for, fuel intake. And there's 2 of them, and they control the entire V8 plenum. And occasionally those can go out, putting the car in a limp mode. I was like, you know what? Not a big deal. I'll deal with it if it happens. And I kid you not. Go up there. I remember this. It's raining. Sean is with me. It's early, very early in the morning. Go up there, go to the auction house, tell them I'm buying this car. They go, okay, go down the street, give the cashier's check to the bank, get the title from the bank, and bring it back to us. Done deal. So we bring the title back to the auction house, get in the car. I'm ecstatic. So we're driving it out of the auction house, get on the freeway. I'm texting Sean. I don't text and drive, but I'm texting Sean. I'm like, listen to how it sounds. It sounds amazing. He's like, it sounds good. It sounds real good. A buddy of mine on the way down to my house wants to see it. So we drive to his lot so I can show him because he owns a dealership. And I'm showing him the car, and he gets in it and he starts it and he goes, man, you got a lot of engine lights going on. I'm like, oh yeah, it's just part of it. And I'm panicking because they weren't there before. Long story short, the same day I bought it, it broke and I had to take it to a dealership. And it was like one of the most exhilarating and painful days of my life because I bought a dream car and it broke the same day. Like you can't write this in a book.
I think the best part about it is when he first buys it, this thing sounds amazing. Like it's perfect. It's running.
It's cruising. Sounds great.
He's telling me about how much he loves it as we're on the way to his buddy's lot. And then his buddy gets in it. And it's like, oh yeah, like we'll figure it out. Try to leave the lot and this thing goes into limp mode.
I can't go above 15 miles an hour. I've still got like a 30-minute drive ahead of me. I can't get on the freeway. And so I make it about 2 blocks down from his lot and I call him and I'm like, hey, do you have a trailer I can use? Put this thing on a trailer. And getting that thing on that trailer took almost 2 hours because it couldn't get enough power to get up the trailer. And so put it on a trailer. We take it to a dealership and I find out what's wrong before they do. And they still charge me a bunch of money for it. Got it home, fixed it, runs great. And to this day, I mean, technically it's running, but I can't drive it because it's on coils now and I don't have spacers. So the tires rub against the springs. But anyway, that's another reason why I don't think I could sell that car because it's rare for the V8 and the trim that it is. But also the memory that got made forcibly on the first day that I bought it will always be there. Like I'll never forget that day.
Dude, what a journey. What a story.
Yeah, every one of my vehicles that I've owned has had a story. Some good, some really bad, others decent.
I mean, this one is so interesting, man. You see those WinWiki stories.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. You need to get on and tell the story, dude. It would be great.
That would be VinWiki is awesome. I love VinWiki.
Oh, I can't believe it took me a moment to remember that.
All the guys from the gumball races.
Yeah.
That's a great channel.
Yeah, it needs to be on that, dude. It's awesome. Now, so Sean, like, how was your experience with the Mitsubishi Lancer?
Oh Lord.
Oh goodness.
Dude,
that one before you go, that car alone caused me pain. I didn't even own that car and it caused me pain.
So pretty much after I sold the GTI, a buddy of ours, he's really into like cheap cars. Like you get a cheap car, you don't have payments, blah blah blah. Like you don't spend $5,000. So he kept prodding me about getting something like $2,000 or less. I'm just getting kind of a cheap car to get me through a time period until I can get like a nice car that I wanted. So I gave in. I'm not one to buy like a $1,000 or $2,000 car. I just have this thing, but I caved in. I was like, you know what? The cars that he gets, they at least run. So maybe this isn't a bad idea. So he hits me up one day. He's like, hey, I found this Mitsubishi Lancer that's under $2,000.
It was an OZ Rally. Don't forget that.
It's an OZ Rally. And I'm like, you know what? Like Ryan has a Lancer. I'm kind of interested in Lancers. Let's go look at it and see what it looks like.
Mine's about 7 years newer than his was.
So my buddy and I would go up and look at it. We're talking to the dude. I'm looking over the car, making sure that it all looks nice.
It doesn't.
Cool. So I'm like, cool. You know what? I have no issues with this. Let's just go ahead and get it. If it has problems, I'll fix it. It's fine. So we get that car, and I could not have come with this. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So yeah, I had to make sure my events were lined up here on this one. About a month later, after having it, third gear decided to start giving out. So you can't just go into third anymore. Or you just grind the gear to get into third, and there was no correcting it. So this is like a $1,000 car. I'm like, I don't want to go through the effort of fixing this. So I kind of let that be. Then the clutch started giving out. So that one, I'm like, all right, we at least have to get this fixed. That way I can at least drive the car. So I bring it over to Ryan's garage because I pretty much do all my repairs at his garage. And I'm though, oh my God. I don't know. Do you want to explain the events of your garage and what happened?
So
Yeah, sure.
the first thing about this Oz Rally is, have you seen those real big, ridiculous tachometers that have a shift light that you can put in the corner of your A-pillar? Yeah, that car had one. It was ridiculous. It looked like it was at a Need for Speed. It was pathetic. But so Sean bought a clutch. He bought like a cheap Exetti clutch to put in the car. And that was really the first, I think that was one of the first transmission jobs I've done, like fully out of the car. And since it was an inline four, it was an inline four, I think, right?
Yep, inline four.
It was a transverse motor. So the transmission was facing the driver's side fender. So in theory, it looks pretty easy to crack the engine away from the bell housing. It was not. My dad finally had to come help us because we couldn't all lift it by ourselves. But we technically the proper way is you lift the engine up from the bottom with a jack, release it from the engine mounts, and then you should be able to finagle the transmission off the flywheel and the clutch fork, and you can get it out of the car. Well, we didn't do that because we didn't have that time or patience. So we disconnected the transmission, and the three of us just wrestled it out of the side of the car like a bunch of Neanderthals. So we put the new clutch and the new flywheel. You got a new flywheel, didn't you?
Yeah, whole thing.
So we got a whole kit for this transmission. Put that thing in there, bolted it up, excited, happy, made it worse. couldn't get it out of my garage. The clutch had no pressure. And if you wanted to get it to catch at that point, you had to rev it up to like 3, 4, 5K and then just dump the clutch. And it might catch, it might not. So you got to make sure you're on a downhill and there's no cars around you or behind you, because it'd take you like 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes to get up to like 40, 45.
Oh my God. That's so
any of his cars that he's owned, I have been there through all of it. Painfully, all of it.
And yeah, so we finally fixed it at some point though, because I was finally able to drive it.
We got it decent enough to where it was like he was able to get to work with it.
But so yeah, after we finally fixed it, I mean, it still had a third gear issue. I still don't care. I'm driving it to work and back. Like it's not a project by any means. At this point, it's just a car to get me around until I can get a nicer car. However, at some point, something on the negative post of the battery, the cable, it broke. And so half the time I'd be driving the car, and if it shook just right, the battery would disconnect. Thankfully, I mean, most cars, they don't, like, once you get them started, they don't really need a battery. So you don't really have to worry about it until you stop. So that was another issue, but again, didn't care to fix it. I'm like, I don't care anymore. This thing, it just needs to last me a little bit longer. So we finally get to the point, or I finally get to the point where this car needs to be sold. Like, I just need to move on to something else. It's a Lancer. I don't care about it. I want another Volkswagen. So I ended up selling the thing. I ended up selling it to some dude, and he took it. And the best part about it is somehow the car gave up on him. So he left it somewhere out in Utah, and I get a letter, I want to say about a month later, saying, hey, your car's at the junkyard, please pick it up. Needless to say, I sold that car and I did not go pick it up.
One of the one of the stories that reminded me of is a couple years ago, I had this weird thing. So I really wanted a Geo Metro.
Mm.
I don't know why. I just wanted the Geo Metro because I think they're super cool. They're tiny and they're not very fast.
Mm.
And Sean was doing some stuff with his old Audi one day, and we were at the DMV here to get his license all fixed. And I saw a Geo Metro in the parking lot, and I was like, I want one of those. I want that car. So we got on the want ads that night, and we found one. There was a city over, and we went and looked at it. And I kid you not, this guy, it was like, oh, what was it? Like a 1994 Geo Metro. It was like it was a 3-cylinder. So obviously it was very fast. And it was green. Oh, it was so green. And the guy had this book, and in this book, he kept everything, every maintenance record, every time it went to get an oil change, every time he took it to the DMV, everything he had in this book. It was a pristinely maintained car. And then we got it. So we got Sean and we got our buddy Tristan, and we all decided that we were going to go buy this car. And so these two get in it and they drive it. And this guy lives at this top of this really steep hill. And the guy's like, yeah, test drive it, please. And so they take it down the hill and they turn around and they're struggling and up the hill. And they both get out and they go, we have to buy this car. I think we bought that car for $500 between the three of us. And the first thing we did was immediately modify it. So we got it over to my house. We started ripping stuff off it, changing stuff. And we wanted to dump it as low as possible. We wanted to get it on the ground, as stanced as possible. And so what we did was we took the springs off the struts and we got hockey pucks. And we cut a hole in the center of the hockey puck and put it over the strut because it created a buffer so it wasn't metal on metal. And we dropped the car and the car was like an inch off the ground. But that wasn't enough for us. So what we did was we went to the store and we got gold spray paint. We spray painted the entire car gold. That still wasn't enough. So then we got chalkboard spray, and you can get chalkboard spray and you spray it on the roof and then it becomes a chalkboard and you can write with chalk on it. And so that was Giovanni Metro. We had that car.
She still has an Instagram page.
We still have an Instagram page for that horrible car. And it had an exhaust leak. The best part about that car was it had an exhaust leak right under where the driver and passenger sit. So you'd be sitting at a stoplight getting a headache from all the exhaust fumes. The slowest car ever. And because we dropped it so low on the ground, the 3 spark plug wires that were in the engine, if you hit a bump hard enough, they'd all pop out and the car would shut off. So you'd have to pull over, put the spark plug wires back in the engine, and then you could keep going. So we had that car and drove it around for a while, and it was just nauseating. None of us wanted to get it registered or get a license plate on it. So we left it at a buddy's house for about 2 years, to the point where the grass in his house, this is like 3 or 4 years ago, is still molded in the shape of a Geo Metro. So he eventually took it to a scrapyard, but that was one of the best impulse buys that we ever did.
Can I kind of want to say one thing that you reminded me of. I thought you were going to go with the BMW story and the ticket.
BMW story
in California.
Oh, yeah. He's talking about, so he came out to visit me in California.
Little do we know that dude actually listens to the podcast.
he came when I was living in California. I had that black 323 that I talked about earlier. He came out to visit me and we went down to a city called Santa Cruz in Northern California. And the parking in this city, it's very, very, very small city, but it's built on tourism. So there's lots of tourists, no parking anywhere. And any of the parking you can find is always paid for. And my buddy's with us. My buddy's a native Californian. And he was like, we got to go to this pizza place because it's a California staple. So we pull up to this parking spot. We get out of the car and I'm walking over to the meter to pay the meter. And I turn around and there's a meter maid already ticketing my car. We got there 30 seconds ago and they're already ticketing me. I look at it. I'm kind of frustrated. I just deal with it. And about 3 months later, that subframe goes out and I still got I never paid for that ticket on that car. And this guy and his wife show up one day to buy the car just outright, and he's going to fix all of it and do whatever. I was like, yeah, $350. It's all yours. So if you're listening and you got arrested for that ticket, I apologize, sir, because I never paid that ticket.
You have such a long list of crazy stories.
I do.
Now Ryan, like, how difficult is it to like maintain multiple cars at the same time?
Very difficult. I don't recommend it. It's a pain. So I've got the Lancer. I've got my M3. My dad and I share the Nissan. He doesn't drive it. I do. And I've got my truck. My truck's my daily driver. It's a pain. It is. I mean, it's between washing the cars, maintaining the cars, making sure all of the oil is always done. It's doable, but it's very expensive. And it's something that you kind of have to say, this weekend I'm going to work on this car, and this weekend I'm going to work on this car, because trying to do it all at once is very overwhelming. It really at this point divides out the weak from the strong of who has a passion for cars and who doesn't, because if you've got a passion for cars, then you're probably going to have at least 2 or 3. And if the passion's really that strong, you're going to be able to maintain those 2 or 3 consistently for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to see who has passion for that kind of stuff and who doesn't pretty quickly, because if you say you have passion and you have 3 cars, but one of them's rotting in your driveway and one of them's in a storage unit, and another one is somewhere else, then I don't know if you have that passion. So to answer your question, it's very difficult. It's very doable, but it takes a lot of mental fortitude and it takes a lot of patience and focus to realize that I have to set aside time to do this thing, which is either maintain the car or drive the car. And it's really a labor of love, but it's also very painful sometimes because it gets very expensive.
Sure does. Because dude, like I've seen, like people owning just one project car and like they are just fed up with it. And I'm like, dude.
That's him.
What?
That's him.
My project car?
He owns one project car and it's already hard enough for him.
That's a whole nother level.
So like Sean, like can you just like go over your 1988 Mark II Volkswagen? Like I read that like you are restoring it and you are doing a full engine build-up.
That is right. My pride and joy, even though it doesn't look like my pride and joy right now.
It's like a dumpster.
So so my 1988 Volkswagen Scirocco. I've actually had that since around the time that I had my Lancer, actually. So pretty much that car started off as kind of a impulse buy, where I I had my GTI. I fell in love with the Scirocco body. Granted, they're legal in the US, so it had to be 25 years or older in order for me to actually register it here. So I had finally one day found that I found a Scirocco in KSL, and I was like, I need this. I think it's one of potentially 3 or 4 Scirocco's in Utah that I know of. So I had to get it, and I was like, I'm down. So I drove it for about a year, just enjoying the engine, enjoying the handling of it, until finally decided to start having an overheating issue, where once this thing got to like nominal operating temperature, so you'd be just driving around, enjoying your time, and you get to that point of temperature where the engine I don't even know how to describe it. Anyway, you get to that nominal operating temperature and the car decided to shut off.
The thing that was weird about it too is it wasn't like it was overheating. The car was just like, nah, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then it would just shut off.
Yeah, and you could tell at the moment it's going to start doing it, because all of a sudden you would like hit the gas and it would just be like, no, we're not doing this.
Not today.
You just start seeing the RPMs just kind of going up and down crazy. And it was the funniest thing. In fact, one of the pastimes that I enjoy doing is literally turning on the car and just messing with it. Just turn it on and let it idle and see how long it takes before the thing turns off.
We used to pull it out in the driveway, pull up some lawn chairs, grab some drinks, and let it run for as long as possible. And we'd bet on how long it would run, because it was just the most unreliable engine I've ever seen.
So after finally getting to the point, I decided it was time, and my love for this car, I decided that I wanted to build this thing and restore it. The paint has started fading away a little bit. The clear coat was starting to come off. It was definitely starting to show its age. 120,000 miles on it. So I was like, A, I want to redo the paints. B, I want to restore the interior. There was a little bit of tearing in the seat, not too much at the time. And all that. And I decided, hey, since the engine's giving out, let's put my favorite engine, the one that I know everything about, into this car. The 1.8T from a Mark IV GTI.
Spoiler alert, it ends up in my garage again.
Yeah. So I finally decided that it's time to start getting all this done, and I'm going to start with the engine. So I finally source out a 1.8T AWP engine. So it's from a 2003 to a 2005 Volkswagen GTI. It's kind of an upgraded 1.8T with a little more power than the prior generation, the 2000s, 2004, or 2000 to 2002. And while I'm at it, I'm like, why not just do a couple of things to it?
Couple of things, huh?
The famous last words. I'm all like, I want to spruce this thing up a little bit. Let's give it a little bit more power and just make it like a fun little machine.
Might as well run them through everything you did to that engine.
So we're breaking down the engine, like we're cleaning it, getting all prepped. All right, let's get some more stuff. Next thing you know, we have this engine that's brought to bare block. We were gonna get we got it honed. We got pistons for it. We got rods
because you bored it out to 1/8 of a millimeter.
Yep, I bored out about 2 millimeters from an 80 millimeter to an 82 millimeter. Put new rods in there. Let's see. Oh man, I'm just I get so weird. Anyway,
he's got a built bottom end on this thing. I mean, this thing's capable of upwards of like 900 horsepower.
Yeah, so right now we're looking at about from where we're sitting is about 600 to 700 horsepower. With some slight modifications, I probably could push that up to about 800-900 horsepower.
Oh yeah, easy.
And now it is being deemed the what do we call it? Like to call it the little go-kart now.
It's a little go-kart. Yeah, it's a small little car that's gonna make you go so fast. And the thing is though, is we did all this stuff. We painted the engine bay, ripped the engine out of it, did everything, and we just have to at this point get Sean to get motivated to finish it.
I mean, that is true. I will say we have the new engine in the car. It's just a matter of a couple of mounts that we have to fix and fabricate, because it due to the Mark II Scirocco not being a normal car in the US, not being a very seen car, there's not a lot of aftermarket parts that work, especially when you're doing the swap from the Mark II to any other generation. Whereas if you had like a Mark II Golf or a Mark II Jetta, it's a lot more easy to make that swap. So it's a matter of doing a little bit of fabrication and sourcing out what parts work. But yeah, as soon as we get that thing mounted in, that thing will be started and we'll be flying down roads.
See, what your fans need to do is send Sean motivating quotes. He needs to get motivated to finish this car.
For sure. I will
also,
put in the
Ryan
message
needs
in
to
my
open up his
community.
garage.
I need to open up my garage so Sean's car can park back in it again and we can work on it.
Now, this is a collective question. Okay, like why do you think that like the car community has become so toxic now?
I think that the car community has aspects that are toxic. I also think it has aspects that are great. In the realm of toxic things, I think it detracts from the fact that everyone's sharing the same passion and everyone forgets that. And it more so turns into a competition of whose car is better, whose car is faster, rather than the fact that we're all in the same environment, doing the same thing with different canvases, basically, but we're all sharing the same passion. I think that gets lost in translation a lot because, oh, well, my car is faster, my car is quicker, or whatever it is. I think that stems from the fact that it's just turning into an over competitive environment that doesn't need to be a thing. It just needs to be a community that comes together, that hangs out, that shares a passion. And as simple as that is, it does, like I said, get lost in translation in just the simple fact that people think it's a competition, and it's not. It's you and myself and Sean and whoever else sharing a passion for the same type of thing. And we can talk about it. We can have debates about it. We can have conversations about it. But at the end of the day, we're all sharing the same thing. It's not a competition. And I think that's why it's been or becoming so toxic, is because it's this unspoken competition that doesn't need to be a thing.
Exactly. And Sean, what are your opinions on it?
I mean, a lot of my thoughts are going to echo off of what Ryan said. It really has become some sort of competition, and you can bleep this out if you want to, but it's the only way I could say it, is like who has the biggest dick, like competition.
That's true.
But this like the community. I'm trying to think of the right words to say it. What I would say is kind of in a hypothetical situation. If you take, so Ryan in our situation, so Ryan has BMWs, I have Volkswagens, and whenever like it should be well known, BMWs cost more than Volkswagens. So I think that plays a little bit into my kind of annoyance is in that regard, people who have more expensive cars seem to like look down on people who have Hondas. And then the other way around, people who have Hondas are making fun of the people who have Lamborghinis. And so everyone's kind of, instead of just everyone enjoying their, for Ryan's term, like their instead of everyone enjoying everyone's canvas, they're looking at how to make fun of it. And as well, the one other thing that really bothers me, man, I can't even put it into words. It's been,
I mean, the two things are, it's become a competition, and it's become something it's getting skewed in the light of, I mean, the best way I can put it is competition. There's no reason as to why one car is better than another, because everyone has their own opinions, everyone has their own rights.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of it myself, but I have to also remember that at one point I was in that person's position, and that person being someone that doesn't know very much about cars. And I think it's our job as enthusiasts to educate people in a way that's not demeaning, or that's not rude or mean to them, or to deflate their personality. It's, hey, what do you like and how can I help you learn more, without being condescending. And I think that's something that doesn't happen anymore. And I've met I've met more people in my life that hate on what you're doing, rather than people that are lifting you up in what you're doing in regards to the car community.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the ways to fix the toxicity of it is through being kind and education, simply. I mean, if you're stuck on something, make yourself approachable in the way that, hey, I don't know how to do this. Well, let me help you. Like, let's figure it out together, rather than, well, I don't like that anyway, but it's their car. If you want to make the payments on the car, if you want to buy the car, then you can have an opinion on the car. Otherwise, you have no right to speak on someone else's canvas. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And yeah, man, you know, like for example, the Supra fanboys, the Mark IV fanboys. Dude, like, you know, I have commented on, you know, like I think I commented something about the Supra that like there are like better cars exist in the world than just like 10,000 horsepower Supras.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone decided to like go into my DMs and started abusing the shit out. Like,
Yeah.
dude, have you ever driven a Supra? Like it like I think I had put up a post about the Veyron as well. Like
Yeah.
it's my dream car and all. And he was like, my 10,000 Supra can
Yeah,
smoke
you'll get
your
abused for
Veyron in
it.
a drag race.
Yeah.
And dude, like he became so toxic, dude. I had to block him ultimately.
And
Supra
that's, but
fanboys.
I mean, it's like funny, but at the same time, it's rampant among every industry, like
Mhm.
Subaru, Mitsubishi, Toyota, Nissan. Like, someone's dead set on a Supra, you're not going to change their mind. Someone's dead set on a Nissan, you're not going to change their mind. But the thing that they need to realize is that, and well, at that point, see, it's like our responsibility to be the bigger man and be like, that's cool. Like that's something that you're into. Like, I'm sure your bajillion horsepower Supra could beat my Veyron, but I'm still smiling no matter what. Like, I'm still happy that I own my dream car. And that's what it should come down to. It's not whose car is faster, whose car is better, because everyone that buys that has the car they have thinks it's the best. That's why they bought it. But they think it's the best in their mind. It doesn't mean it's the best in the world. That's what they want. That's what they like. And that's what they love. And that's totally fine. But there is no reason as to why they should abuse someone else for not accepting their vision.
Exactly, dude. But like that was the time when like I was relatively new to the internet. So like it was the
Oh no.
yeah,
Took it personally.
it was the first time like I was receiving so much hate at just like from one person. Like I just blocked him out. But like later I have received like so many DMs, but I'm like, dude, the Supra is a great car. Like it has for a stock car, and like for it's one of the best cars of its time. But like there are better cars as well. And now
Absolutely.
like they are mature enough to understand my viewpoint as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, I see that's the thing is like, I think the M3 is the best car, and I know it's not very fast. I know it breaks all the time, but I own it. No one else does. And I have a lot of fun with it, and that's what it comes down to, is if we're all having fun doing what we like to do, that's what matters. It's not who has the best car, who has the fastest car. If we're all smiling, driving down the road, that's what matters. It doesn't matter who's doing what, just be happy with what you got.
Exactly.
See, he's saying that now. Then my Scirocco is going to be done. He's going to have to make his M3 faster. So
I never said there wasn't competition. I said simply that there was passion, and passion means that I'm going to be faster than you.
Yeah, dude. Like that's the way it should be. Like no car is perfect. Every car, like has its pros and cons. Beat the
Absolutely.
Veyron on, like beat, like some Suzuki. Like
Absolutely.
each car out there is like meant to have a purpose. And if that purpose is maintained and like it performs it, then the car is good. I take it
Absolutely.
in that way. It's as simple as that. And like
Absolutely.
if we don't have knowledge about like particular cars, then we can of course exchange knowledge. Like one of my friends is he's huge into American cars. I don't have much knowledge about them, but he's hugely into tuning. Like he knows like what modifications you can do to your engine to make it faster. So like I take some knowledge from him, and I have some knowledge on exotics, so I give him that. So like there is an exchange of knowledge. That's how it
And
should
that's what a community is. That's all a community is just an exchange of knowledge and just being happy with sharing the same passion as somebody else. That's all it comes down to. There's no competition. There's no overdoing or underdoing. It's just being around people that share the same thing as you. And that's great.
Yeah. So, like Ryan and Sean, do you have any parting words for the audience?
Well, all we can say is spread kindness. Don't hate on people if you don't like their cars. And check out Drunk Boys Basement on Facebook
For
or
sure.
Spotify.
I will link them down in the
or
description.
drunkboysbasement.com.
Or drunkboysbasement.com. We always love hearing from you guys. We always love reviews, and we'd love to have you on our podcast.
Yeah, for sure. We will do it very soon, and I will like link down all your links in the description below so that people can discover you.
That'd be awesome. I appreciate you, man. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for having us on.
You like seriously, dude, one of the best podcasts I ever have. Like
I
so much
appreciate that.
fun, dude. So much
We really
fun.
appreciate that. We appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Like I'm probably like going to like remind myself, like laugh about your story, like the M3 story. So we'll probably a couple of times more in this week.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate that we could share our stories with you.
Yeah, man. And thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that will be all for this time. And
All right. You have yourself a good night.
yeah. And well, it's good morning in here.
Good morning. Yeah. Good morning to you. Good night to us.
Yeah. Good night to you. Good morning to us. So yeah, man. Bye for now.
Bye.
All right.
Have a good one.
See ya.
Yeah. See ya.